doesn't say we're live. And now we're live. All right, good evening, everyone joining us from your kitchens and your living rooms and your cars and wherever you might be. This is the Rainbow Roots Association first ever live broadcast AGM. Typically at this time of year, we would be meeting you in a lovely place like Dynamic Earth or Spacecraft Brewery, and we'd be able to get together and enjoy some snacks and some beverages and talk about the year that was. We are going to do a little bit about that tonight, but we also have tonight a keynote speaker that I think everyone's very excited to hear from, Kielyn Marrone, who was on season 7 of the History Channel's Alone. We thought Kielyn would be an amazing keynote speaker for our event tonight because she has spent 80 days in nature, surviving, living off the land. And that's something not many of us have done before. I'm going to get through some Rainbow Roots Association general business first, as this is an annual general meeting. But we will move on to our keynote address after we finish up with the general business of our meeting. So we hope you learn a little bit about Rainbow Roots Association, get engaged with our association, and we hope that you have been out enjoying our trails. So I'm going to, actually, you'll see our treasurer, Françoise Nadon, is on screen with us right now, and also our executive director, Daniel Barrett. Dan is going to be providing a roots report, and Fran will go over some financials. So glad to see people joining us on board. So keep up the comments if you're watching us through Facebook. But I think we'll kick things off officially now. And if we could share my screen. Thank you very much. So with a little bit of a preamble that I've given you already, and I'd like to kick things off. So this is the general business we're going to run through, about 7 items before we get through the keynote speaker. So first, I would like to call this meeting to order. And we're going to go through some motions in a moment, but first, the meeting's called to order, and I'm going to just let everyone know that our board of directors has done a lot of work in advance to make this quick and easy, kind of doing motions over emails, motion seconder, and we'll go through that in a moment. First, to introduce to you our board of directors, I'd like you to meet myself, Lynn Bullock. I'm the president for the Rainbow Roots Association. Dave Tyndall is our vice president. Carol Craig is our secretary. Françoise Nadon is our treasurer. Peter Beckett is a director. Stanley Corin, also a director on the board, as well as Giselle Roberts, Ursula Sauve, and Jim Little. Rainbow Roots Association has 2 amazing staff members. Daniel Barrett is our executive director, who you've seen on screen a moment ago, and Ashley Compo is our promotions manager. Both of those folks, we could not achieve what we achieve year over year without their amazing enthusiasm and energy. First of all, at this time of year, we go through elections. This time around, we've had no resignations from the board. Our board of directors has passed a few motions. The first one to accept Lynn Bullock, myself, president for a second term of 3 years, moved by Jim Little, seconded by Stanley Corin. Thank you, fellows. Second motion to accept Dave Tyndall, vice president, for a second term of 3 years, moved by Stanley Corin, seconded by Ursula Sauve. Thank you, Ursula and Stan. And third motion to accept the nomination of Dawn Brown for a 3-year term as director of the board, moved by Dave Tyndall, seconded by Ursula Sauve. I just wanted to quickly mention we had 21 amazing candidates apply for positions on the board. It was a tough decision. There were rounds of interviews. This time, the board selected Dawn Brown, and all of the applicants who were within that pool were going to hang on to those applications should new director positions become available. We thank everyone who applied. It was a tough decision. I'd like to throw things over to our treasurer now, Françoise Nadon. who will go over our financials.
Hi, and good evening, everybody. Thanks for being with us here tonight. So I'm going to go over the financial report for the year ending December 31st, 2019. And we're going to start with the balance sheet for Rainbow Routes. And the balance sheet is basically a snapshot in time. So if we look at our assets at the top, you can see we have a healthy cash position with having received Trillium funds in advance of the Dynamic Earth project. The accounts receivable, that is for funds that are yet to be received for projects that are completed. So you'll see we have assets of $114,834. On the liability side, accounts payable and accrued liabilities, that's essentially just bills and things that we have to pay for that haven't been paid yet. Well, they've been paid by now, but at the time we did the exercise. And deferred revenues of $62,657. Deferred revenues consist of funds received but not yet earned, meaning that they're funds that are received for projects that we haven't started yet. Net assets, which is basically our reserve, unrestricted reserve funds, is $40,684, and I'll explain more. They've gone down from the previous year, $46,454, and I'll explain why in the next section, which is a statement of operations. If I can get to the next slide. Thank you very much. So we have the statement of operations for the year ending December 31st, 2019. As you can see, the total revenues generated in 2019 were $280,856. You'll note a good portion of that is generated through our grants and contributions through various sources, namely municipal sources, provincial and federal, so any kind of programming that's available out there. We've had a good year of sponsorship. Of the 13,000 noted in the statements, 5,500 came from the Royal Bank of Canada, so thank you very much. We did receive a $1,000 anonymous donation, which was very nice, so thank you to that person. And the balance, 7,500, were donations from the general public at large. So that makes up our revenue stream of $280,856. On the expense side, you'll see the bulk of our expenses were incurred with the trail development projects that we undertook for the year, and also the salaries and benefits that were paid. So of note, in 2019, the Rainbow Routes Association, we were pleased to be able to hire 3 full-time individuals during the year, and also three interns and three students over the year, which was a bonus. We did slightly have an excess of expenditures over the revenues, so it puts us in a slight deficit of $5,770. But that is offset with the unrestricted revenues that we have from previous years. That was the $40,000 that I mentioned from the balance sheet. So overall, RRA is in very good shape. We've had a good year. And that is the conclusion of my financial report. So I guess I'm putting forward the motion now to approve and accept the financial report, which was seconded by Dave. Thanks, everybody. So my part is done now, and I would like to introduce to you our wonderful executive director, who is the anchor in our association and our organization, who's done a lot of good work for us in the past year. Daniel Barrett. Dan's going to take it over now. Thanks.
Thank you, Fran. And before I get to my presentation, I'm going to say it's kind of a little bit different this year because I always fed off the energy of the people in the crowd, and I'm assuming a lot of people out there are people I know and that have come to know me, especially through the AGM. So I'm going to go with one of the comments I saw where Jim Little said, Dan and Ashley rock. And I'm going to say to that, we rock because there's a bunch of volunteers and dedicated directors from the board that are like pushing the rocks forward and getting things done. So let's switch it up to my presentation if we may. Oh, all right, there we go, perfect. So this is my year in review, and Lynn yesterday was saying most people come here to skip the business portion and hear the keynote speaker, but my job as executive director is to give you that year in review and try to make you excited about this what we do during the year. I've been here 5 years, and this year I was lucky to work with Ashley Campbell, who's done all the community outreach, events, and social media. So I thank you very much. And both of us put this presentation together. So let's jump right in there. I'm going to be first speaking at events because hiking solo has its moments. We enjoy it, but being on trails with other people is an excellent way to reconnect, laugh, and motivate ourselves. And that's why at Rainbow Roots we do these events to get people out there and excited. And seems a far time ago, but in January, the board of directors rolled up their sleeves and got Adam Schultz, explorer extraordinaire, to come and storytell his 4-month adventure through the Arctic Circle. We had people from Espanola, from North Bay coming out to this at capacity event. During the winter time, we also collaborated with Junction Creek Stewardship Committee to bring an educational walk by no one else than Peter Beckett and Gerard Courtin, two amazing individuals on the regreening front here in Sudbury. And through these walks, we bring forward environmental appreciation and community awareness. Guided hiking. This unfortunately stopped in mid-March, but in the span of December to March, we had 8 amazing individuals that are out there leading hikes, 87 in total in the span of 3 months, which resulted in 1,200 people coming out on trails. And then this we done in January as well. It was the 6th trail challenge until under the Ontario Sports and Recreational Grant. And we had a $550 donation in value and prizes from Ramaco's Adventure for Sports for people who participated. Now, through these initiatives, we look to engage people on trails, but it's also our way of filling up the web with a whole bunch of pictures of people out there enjoying trails and really showcasing what we have here in Sudbury. And if there's one event that does this really well as well, it's the Sudbury Camino. So we had our 4th Camino this year. 160 participants participated for this challenge, 30-kilometer challenge of your mind and physical body on a 1-day trek. And here in Sudbury, we have about 100 kilometers of the Great Trail, which has 27,000 kilometers of trail connecting across Sudbury, across Canada from coast to coast. So one thing we found out in the 2020 world, which is completely different, we started really paying a lot of attention to analytics. And I think a lot of people will be interested in the findings, which are not surprising, but which are pretty amazing. And they are that we've in the last 6 months, before and after March, we found website users and page views increasing 50 and 60%. People accessing our trail map increased 225%, and the trail network almost 100% as well. So our calendar and our events page completely tanked. But another interesting facet is that on our website, we have all the trails that you can find in Sudbury. Generally, they get about 500-600 hits in that 6-month period. Almost every one of them increased to 1,500 or more. So it kind of really shows you that trails are key to quality of life, and that's what we're sharing. And we're going to be taking these statistics and bringing that to policymakers and grant funders to really say, let's keep investing in everything trails. So when we talk about investment in trails, no doubt the 2020 world kind of slowed down our construction activities to some extent, but the extra time was spent to really take care of past business and really wrapping up some of our past commitments. One of those was trail signage, which happened to be on the Kelly Lake, Hillfield, and New Sudbury Trail. And another one that we were exploring is very specific user alerts. And I'm not sure if people out there have seen these, but we've started dabbling in these user alerts to really, really where there's a specific issue on a specific trail. And oftentimes we're putting these once somebody brings that issue to our attention. So we find that's a great way to potentially talk about user etiquette, and foster more aware users. So there's a lot of potential in this, and we're just in the early stages of seeing how this can really work. And then finally, we're just about to transfer our trail asset of the new Sudbury Trail to the city and realized that there was missing 1 or 2 benches along the way. So we were able to shuffle some funds around and put in this cool cedar bench here that you can see. And finally, this is where I'm really going to get into one of our trail projects, because the Dynamic Earth Trail is something we've been working on for almost 2 years now. And I'm going to go into details a little bit more about this one since it is substantially complete. And so this trail, review of trail, started as far back as 2006. And Dynamic Earth is Canada's 8th largest science center, and it doesn't have a legal walking and biking access to it. And that was problematic for us. So we were trying to look at what we could do. And up until recently, this is where it wasn't uncommon to see people walking up Big Nickel Road. Not the most pleasant, safe experience, is it? So we looked at a whole bunch of options here, and we came up with this green route, the back route, where we had an opportunity to create that trail. The goal was to be barrier-free and usable by the largest extent of population base possible. We want to make this a positive and fun experience. At the same time, we do want to connect the site to Gashel. But the challenge is we're building a trail along an area that has to go up, has an elevation difference of 70 feet. And it's basically on a rock outcrop with minimal fill. So we consulted with the community, the local community action network, members of the city's accessibility advisory panel, a lot of board of director visits as well. And we came up with the qualities of the trail, or the specifications found on this sub trailhead that we started using. I'm going to draw your attention to the running slope. If you can see that, you can see it's 10% and 13%. 10% gets pretty steep for this type of trail, but we were really trying to, it was the best we can do to really meet constraints and the area and making it accessible to the most people possible, making it barrier free. Now, the other interesting feature of this trail is the distance. It's only 0.35 kilometers, which is 350 meters. Now, 2 things to that. The good thing is that Dynamic Earth is already looking at, and Rainbow Roots is potentially looking at expanding that future years. It's going to take some time, but eventually we should see that number bump up and with more trails connected to it. But the other thing on the 350 meters, when I was out there looking at the site being substantially complete, I almost felt a little bit uneasy because it was so short, and because the trail is it's very different. It's very unique infrastructure. So I was out there thinking, geez, was this really the best solution? How is the community going to receive this? And what could we do to enhance the feature and make this the most pleasant experience? And then it got me thinking, when I think Rainbow Roots, there's 3 triads to Rainbow Roots in a sense. There's trail, nature, and then there's community. So as a very last pitch in late October, we sent a pitch out to the community saying, who wants to come out and put a little bit of human energy and touch into this trail that was contractor Rainbow Roots built? And 30 volunteers answered the bell. I'm going to go through a little bit of what they built here. We had this one family of 4, 2 young kids come out, build this beautiful rock wall along the edge here where there was a steep bank. There's another teenager that came out with white sneakers and no gloves, but nonetheless super ready to put her hands in dirt and to move earth. And over the next 2 days, there was half a dozen volunteers that worked on the features that were started there to create this beautiful little earth buffer on the edge here to kind of delineate the trail, to get people to stay on that section where there's steep banks, and to basically beautify it over time. One more family came out. One teenager saw an opportunity to slow down stormwater runoff and built this beautiful little rock wall along there. And along with his two siblings and his parents, they spent a good few hours moving earth and rocks in that area. And in the end, oh yeah, and this is the last feature. So on the Sunday there was 9 people with very solid backs that came out, and we decided to build this very unique feature. I'm sure you haven't seen many of these on trails, a giant rock staircase. And there was 3 purposes to this. First, we wanted to clean up the area, all these rocks that flew all over the place. At the same time, we wanted to keep that shortest path for people that are very destination based, wants to get to point A to point B fastest. Also, this gives a very risk controlled play area for kids. And at the same time, we see this as very high cardio potential. So if you want to run up and down a few times, I'm sure this will start pumping your heart. And finally, here's the scenic view halfway through. So at the top, we've got a beautiful scene, and you can really see the switchbacks and the rock staircase along here. And then one more slide is, through this project, we are working with the city's regreening team and people like Peter Beckett to really bring forward some of the natural vegetation that takes place in Sudbury. And we're hoping to install a few interpretive signs along the way to educate people and really make it a really awesome trail experience. So that was our big construction push. And but along the way, we spent a lot of time in the background advancing what our vision and mission should be. And in this, we developed a new strategic plan for the next 5 years. I'm going to read the vision out loud because it's really awesome, and I think most people are going to appreciate it. Is that we want an aspiring trail network throughout Greater Sudbury that links communities and meets diverse outdoor recreation and healthy living needs. This is all going to be on our website, so feel free to go up there and check out our mission vision as well. There's going to be 4 pillars for us to meet this vision. The first is trail infrastructure. Bullet number 1 is worth reading. Enhance and expand Greater Sudbury's non-motorized trail network. If you're here, I'm sure you believe in that. We do that through programming as well. We want to move programming forward to get people out on trails, really engage them with nature and active lifestyle. I'm going through this quickly because there's a lot of text here, and I know you're going to want to get to the guest speaker before long. Promotions and communications is integral to what we do, and bullet number 3 really resonates with me, is that, here it is, we want to communicate the benefits of trails and their potential to enhance population health, active transportation, affordable recreation, tourism, environmental appreciation, and in fostering resilient communities. So we want to really share the message that investing in trails, investing in us connecting in nature is super important on so many fronts, and it's definitely worth investing. Now, to be able to be a sustainable and robust organization, we do need strong governance and to be financially sustainable. So we pride ourselves on the past years of financial stewardship. We essentially work off a $45,000 operational grant from the city of Greater Sudbury. And in the last 4 years, we've turned that into revenues of over $200,000 that gets invested in interns, in staff, and in trail building. So in here, sustainability, we talk about grants and funders. We're lucky this year to have financial support from these great businesses. And finally, the other thing that we recognize is to be robust and financially stable, we need the buy-in of the community as well. And so we've just, after 20 years, we redefined a little bit of our membership strategy here. And we want you to become trail ambassadors with Rainbow Roots Association. And to give you a little bit of an incentive as well, we've put on these new perks that is on the next slide here. And these perks they're pretty awesome, from other community associations and businesses that are really awesome as well. So a 1-day park pass for each member, 50% off bike tune-ups at sessions during the winter months, discounts on Old Rock, and Spacecraft Brewery, you're 20% off everything you eat there. And finally, a small discount from us as well to pick up things like our merchandise, like this cool t-shirt and hoodie that we have available, which is a super Sudbury Rainbow Roots Association unique thing here. And that wraps it up for me. I'm going to try to find my way back to the show differently and welcome other people back here. There we go. So I'd like to thank everybody who's here, the volunteers that participate in what we do. I wish we could connect, and normally I draw off so much energy from everybody I meet in the Rainbow Roots family. And we're lucky. I work with a really strong board of directors, one of them being Lynn, and Lynn has experience in social media, in marketing, and being in front of a camera. So there's no other better person to be a president at this time for Rainbow Roots, but also to lead us into what is going to be taking place next.
You're just about making me blush. That is, I just feel so honored actually to be part of this organization. I know that there are some people feeling maybe disappointed that they weren't the successful applicant with the board of directors position that was open. But I just want to let them know it took me a year waiting just to become a board member on Rainbow Roots until a position opened up, because people are very passionate about what Rainbow Roots does. And to me, this volunteer position is extremely rewarding to work with the team that we have, and also just to see the positive changes in the community. It just gives me such a sense of what you can do when everybody pitches in a little bit. And so that's why this is such a special organization. And so I'm really pleased to see everybody online joining us tonight, and commenting. Also letting you know through our governance processes that if there's things that you're kind of questioning or you're not sure about, membership matters. Your membership means that you have a say in things. We email members for focus group information. And so it helps our organization when we have memberships that are sold, that grant us kind of the option to communicate with you. But that said, our community is really everyone. So you don't need to be a member to benefit from Rainbow Roots, to walk the trails, and to have your say on what we're doing.
And we could take a side note, Lynn, here. And one of the things I've realized in the last few years is that people really want to invest themselves in their local trail network. And we're taking note of that. And over the next year or so, or next few months, we're going to have some serious discussions with people like the City of Greater Sudbury and the partnerships out there to see how we can integrate people into their local trails even more, and facilitate that process for sure. Because we love our trails, and every reason to be out there, whether we're kind of working or grooming or just enjoying nature, is a great reason to be out there.
If there's anything we learned from this very unusual year, it was how much spending time in nature matters to people, to the point where at times the trails were so busy that we didn't, but the city determined that it was time to close a trail or reopen a trail because of the intense traffic going on some of the very popular neighborhood trails. But we look at them not only as a place to unwind and relax and spend time in nature, but also for transportation, active transportation opportunities. So there are so many reasons to keep investing in trails, and we know that we're talking to people that feel the same way tonight. People that want to have those opportunities. So Dan, thank you for your report, your fulsome report, all of the progress that we've made this summer. Also looking at a safe community volunteer opportunity that you were able to coordinate through the Dynamic Earth Trail build. I loved hearing the stories of how people pitched in and used their own resources and creativity to make sure that that trail is safe, that it will not have a negative impact on the environment, that there's proper groundwater runoff. These are all things that Rainbow Roots seeks to, achieve in building trails and planning them. So congratulations on a job well done, everyone, volunteers included. I think we're just about ready to bring up our guest speaker, Kielyn. Right. Hello, Kielyn. So, Dan, did you want to say hello to her before we kick off our formal guest speaker keynote address?
Absolutely. It's an honor to have you here with us to share the passion to be outdoors and just that adventure of really pushing ourselves to the limits. Those limits are defined by are unique to each of us, right? So when you meet somebody that really pushes their boundaries and limits, it's awesome to hear their story.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
All right. So thank you, Dan. I think for now we'll just have Kielyn and I kind of chat, and we've set this up as kind of an interview keynote address so that Kielyn doesn't have to kind of prepare formal remarks and walk things through. I became aware of the Alone season 7 show a little late in the game, but to introduce Kielyn Marrone, she is a co-owner of Lure of the North, a guided trail business in Espanola. She lives on a remote, kind of in a remote cabin scenario, off the grid with her husband and her dogs. She really rose to fame, international fame, through being cast as a contestant on season 7 of the History Channel's Alone. Andre Stewart is just commenting how much he loved Alone. It's actually, I was biking with Andre and the group of there's a Sudbury bike group that I was biking with every Thursday, and people couldn't stop talking about how addictive this series was. They couldn't wait for the next episode to come out. I didn't even have television service, so I was kind of curious what they were talking about. But it actually drew me back in to see what was on television, this particular show. In a nutshell, Kielyn is the bronze medalist and the only Canadian competitor to win out of a cast of 10 competitors who needed to spend 100 days living on Great Slave Lake in the Northwest Territories through fall and winter. It was an incredible challenge. To be second runner-up is an amazing achievement. And I think now, I mean, you've been home for several months now. This series, the season finale was in August, and that's whenever I think you were allowed to talk about the outcomes finally. But as things unfolded, I think people were watching along with you, rooting for you. I guess the first question most people would have is, why did you want to challenge yourself in this way?
I asked myself that a lot, actually. The truth be told is that my husband Dave actually applied for the show, and he watched season 4 because we knew the winners of season 4. And so we were rooting for them, and Dave got inspired to be like, oh, maybe I think I'd like to do that. And so he applied, never heard anything for season 5 was a redemption season. Then season 6, we didn't hear anything. And then they contacted him last late winter, like the year before I left. And they were like, we're looking for winter specific specialists, and we want you to apply. And then they were like, oh, like you have a wife, you know, she's into that stuff too, can she apply? Like they asked me to apply. So I just sort of applied, and like we just finished our busy tripping season. They contacted us when we were on our last big trip, so we didn't get it until the deadline was like within 3 or 4 days or something. And so they wanted video and all of this, like, I don't know, like a big portfolio. And Dave and I put very little effort into it because we're like, we've been contacted by TV programs before and none of them panned out. So we didn't really take it that seriously. And we both made it to the top 20. So we got flown to New York for the boot camp. So, you know, I obviously was going along as like, this is like a free vacation, you know, all expenses paid, and I just tag along. And as I was going through the boot camp, and they feed you all of this like confidence boosting kind of, you know, jargon, and I was like, oh, like maybe I should do this, and it started growing on me. So in my final interview, you know, the production executives were talking to me, and they were like, why do you want to do this? And well, big surprise, I like burst into tears. And I basically just said, I'm tired. I'm tired. You know, we've been growing this business for 10 years and it's been nonstop. And we moved out to the bush while consecutively running our business that was growing. And I'm tired and I need a break. Like I needed a break from the business. And so it was like, go survive in the woods for as long as you can with no food and only 10 items, or have a cushy life and, you know, work hard, you know, like we always do. And I don't know, I guess the decision was made for me.
So the $1 million definitely was a great motivator, right?
It certainly helped. Yeah.
The chance to win $1 million. And also just the challenge in thinking you needed to do something different. So I think a lot of us can relate to that. Now, you, in a way, so you've been preparing in your life. Like there were all kinds of things that kind of happened in your life, or that you challenged yourself throughout your life that kind of built to this moment. Like when you think back to all of the things that you've done that built you up to make you ready for this, what are some of those things, like starting out as a, you know, young person?
I'm not really sure. I think it's mostly that I just feel comfortable in the wild. That comfort and lack of fear when I'm in the bush, I think goes a long way, because that, and also I live in the bush, and I lived in a tent for 3 years. So I knew that there wasn't going to be very many surprises going in, besides the whole starvation thing and like having to provide all your own food. I knew that was going to be a bit of a, you know, a challenge for me, but the whole being comfortable in the woods, I've always felt that, you know, since a young kid. And so I think that's probably the most confidence inspiring aspect of the whole thing, because your hard skills are important, but it's the mental game that keeps you there and keeps you going. And I don't know, for anyone that did watch it, I think they showed my story to be as accurate as I think most people's story could be, with like the highs and the lows. And they showed them because I filmed them, you know, like I was vulnerable on the camera and I was using it as basically like my Wilson, right? Like it was my only companion, and I'm very much like a family, you know, oriented person. And so I also have never been one to be embarrassed about talking about emotions or showing emotion and being, you know, wear my heart on my sleeve kind of thing. So,
you know, you talked a little bit too about what kind of geared you up for facing these challenges and ups and downs. And you had kind of a career as a competitive swimmer. You completed the Outdoor Adventure Leadership Program at Laurentian. There were like many kind of things that can build you up to this. Do you think that when people are thinking about, could I do that? What are the things that you remember about yourself that are, in retrospect, you know what, this helped me get through this? Like these were things that, the tough times that helped me learn how to cope.
Well, I think there's so many things. Risk management is a huge one. You know, weighing the risk versus reward, and the cost versus the benefit. And, you know, that is something that you learn just through experience and in life. Like, it doesn't have to be in the outdoors. I mean, everyone that's watching is making making decisions that they're weighing, the cost versus the benefit. And so, but doing that in the wilderness, the consequences are potentially quite high, but so are the benefits. And so, when you and then to have that experience, to know, okay, if that consequence happens, how am I going to be able to deal with that? So you kind of have to have your plan A, and then what if it doesn't go well? And then what's your plan B? And then what's your plan C? And what's your plan D? And you have to be adaptable, flexible, and always moving forward. And that's what I did out there. By no means did everything go perfectly. But at the same time, I never dwelled on something that incapacitated me. It was always like, well, that kind of sucked and that didn't work, but hey, like, let's pivot, and that's something that I wish they maybe had shown a little bit more. And I do think that they show it in like fast forward. They're like, oh, I'm crying, like, this is the worst moment of my life, and then I'm like, I'm back, baby. Like, it's like, there's a lot of times where, I cried because it was an emotional experience that, I couldn't share with anybody. And those decisions had so much weight on me. And so, I think being able to stay adaptable, flexible, and that risk management is really important, to get you through that.
Kielyn, thinking about, the video that you shot of yourself and what you chose to share, and, the realities of it, it's pretty fascinating to see the resilience that you demonstrated. When you think about the other competitors, and you've talked about what prepared you to do this, and you're like, well, I'm comfortable in the bush. I know how to, I have all these skills, and I lived in a tent for 3 years. Well, so did all of those other 9 people. You were competing against Marines, professional guides as well, and also like men that were physically dominant, like definitely, like they're going in and they've got 50 pounds on you. So it kind of makes me think about the special skills that you had to get through that, but also the resilience of it. And I mean, we saw many competitors drop out of the show earlier on, because they couldn't, frankly, they missed home so much. They missed their children, they missed their wife, they just couldn't do it anymore. We saw you screaming. You probably screamed more than any of those competitors, but 80 days, and you outlasted 7 of them. That's tremendous. Thinking about the 80 days, and I'm wondering, because it's been a while since, many of us have watched the show, if you could take us through kind of those months that passed, because at the beginning it didn't look like really hard trekking. Like, looked like, okay, well, we have some things to figure out in terms of where to set up camp. But then as weather changed and you seemed to discover a bit of a microclimate in the area that was your designated area, if you could take us through, like, how did those seasons, if you will, like, impact your approach?
Well, going into it, I was preparing for winter. Like, I was already, okay, it's September, but I know that in October it's going to be winter. So the preparation, began as soon as I found out that I was going on, by making my gear. And we make all our own, like, moccasins, mittens, snowshoes, anoraks. But I've got the sort of layering system that I usually use around here, but I knew I would be low on body fat. It was going to be way colder. So I'll be in a starvation situation more than likely. And so I built my gear knowing that I would be low on natural body insulation. So my moccasins were like 3 sizes too big. My mitts were 2 sizes too big. You were allowed a pair of hiking boots and then a pair of winter boots. Well, my hiking boots were fully insulated rubber boots. So I knew like these are going to keep me warm right through winter. And my moccasins, of course, were going to be as warm as I could make them. And so right from the get-go, like the first week I was just sweating. I mean, I was walking around in my long johns and, you know, base layer because I was way too hot, but I knew that was a good thing because I knew that that means that the rest of my clothes, you know, piled on me is going to help me in the future. And yeah, I mean, it's hard to summarize my 80 days out there, but it was all about prepping for winter and never stopping, never being satisfied with what I had, because I knew it was only going to get harder and harder and harder. And what ultimately took me out was that I just was out of fat. You know, like emotionally, it was a roller coaster for me. But by day 80, I was, you know, tunnel vision, like in it to win it, the 100 days. But it ultimately came down to doing that risk management and not willing to take the risk for my future, my health. I couldn't keep my hands and feet warm anymore. I was out of fat, and the fishing was not producing enough for me to catch up on what I had already lost. Jeff, oh my gosh. I haven't heard from you in years.
So this is amazing to hear you talk about the gear that you brought. Do you kick yourself over anything? Like, do you think in retrospect, or did you think while you were out there, like, oh, if only I did this?
I'm a person that lives with no regrets. I am Stannis Baratheon. Whoever watches Game of Thrones, always move forward. I don't live my life with regrets. But I have gotten this question a lot, and I think the biggest thing, I just wouldn't have been so hard on myself. I was really hard on myself, and I think that prevented me from experiencing that heavenly bliss of the experience for so long. By like day 60, I became this like new person out there, where like this weight was lifted off of me, and I became truly acceptant of the experience, and that I think probably because day 60 was sort of in my head, like, I will be proud of myself if I can get to that day 60 mark. And so I think once I hit day 60, this like just weight got lifted, and I just was acceptant of however it ends. And I'm like, don't need to win, just like, I'm just so thankful for the experience. And that actually allowed me to I guess enjoy the experience a little bit more, even though it was getting harder and harder those last 20 days, obviously. And so by the end, when I decided to leave, I was so at peace with it, and I felt like I had won. And ultimately the money for us, like, I was actually thinking out there while I was doing well, I was like, man, like, I don't know what I would do with $1 million. Like, I think it would be too much money. I think it would change how we go about our lives. Like, Dave and I are hustlers. Like, we're workers. Like, we put in the dirt time, and that's what we love. And we're always challenging ourselves. I think just having that $1 million, like, no doubt I'd do some wicked things with it and give a lot to my family and, support local, organizations. But I mean, I'm happy the way it happened, basically.
Most people online, I mean, some people are asking a question here and there, and I want to put one through, which is, what was your scariest moment?
I was only ever scared once out there, and yeah, it was amazing. I was actually pretty surprised that I never once like felt uneasy or scared or nervous or anything like that, apart from this one time was winter by then, and I was zipped up into my sleeping bag. And anyone who knows a mummy bag, like, you know, you you zip it up and that's all you got, and you can barely hear anything. I've got my fur hat on. I'm all tucked away, and right behind my head. So I had insulated my walls quite thick with boughs and snow, but right behind me, this scream, like it was like a witch cackling scream. And it was so loud. And I was just like, oh, I just had a notification saying, Rainbow Roots, talk tonight. A little late. It was just screaming at me. And I was just like, what is that? Like, I had no idea, because I've heard foxes scream before. And it didn't sound like that. And like, no owl I know makes that sound. And, so it's going to hit the possibilities. And afterwards, I couldn't find the prints. I couldn't find the like prints in the snow. And I was talking to season 6 winner Jordan, and I did a demo for him. I won't do it for you guys because I'll for sure embarrass myself. But he's like, that was a wolverine. And he's like, for sure that was a wolverine, because he had quite a number of encounters with wolverines. And yeah, and so we're supposed to film everything. And usually, so we had to do a morning journal and a night journal. And so I did my night journal, but then I moved the camera to the other side of my shelter. I'm zipped up in my sleeping bag, and this noise is going off. And I look at the camera, like thinking, I need to turn it on. I need to turn it on. I'm like, there's no way I'm getting out of my sleeping bag right now. So yeah, that was the scariest thing I'd ever had. So I was thankful that I had a good shelter. It was well protected.
Do you really think it was Wolverine proof though?
Oh yeah, it was a wolverine for sure. And like, it was
No, I mean, like,
messy.
was your shelter Wolverine proof?
Oh,
Like, they can tear apart like wood bins. Like,
yeah, for sure. I mean,
very terrifying. Like,
yeah, but animals aren't typically like prone to just attacking someone that's sleeping. Like, unless you're a mountain lion or like a cougar or a panther or some cat, I don't think. I mean, I was scared, but I wasn't like scared for my life. I was just like, what is that?
I think it then again goes to the, being able to handle stuff like bumps in the night, which when you're an experienced camper, you have to learn how to get over that. Because it could just be toads jumping against the wall of your tent, and it's nothing.
It's amazing how loud a mouse can sound.
Yeah. Another person asked what your favorite part of the 80 days was.
Well, hands down, catching that first fish. I mean, that was like, I needed that. Yeah, I needed that. I'm really glad the camera was turned on.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I actually kind of liked how some of the other competitors showed like, okay, so it's not just, but like, by the way, if you're sitting at home watching this, it's not just that we are here and living in the bush, surviving for 100 days, and that's the challenge. No, by the way, the gig is also record all of the things that you're doing. So, I mean, adding that layer in addition, I mean, is that something you ever practiced before? Did you have that going in or no?
Yeah, a little bit. Like, we do our own filming for our expeditions on snowshoe trips. So I was well versed in how to keep camera batteries from dying and crashing, and how to prevent frost building up on lenses, and taking care of your camera gear. And I am the photographer, videographer on our trips, so I actually enjoy that part of it. And it was definitely an added challenge for the experience, but does become kind of second nature to you. The last 10 days were brutal on the cameras though, because it was like in the minus 30s and 40s. And even in my shelter, like I basically had to, so we had like 3 cameras, or we had like we had 3 GoPros, and I just immediately gave up on those because they're so bad in the cold. And then we had like a JVC kind of handy cam for like quick moments, Blair Witch style, you know. And then we had like the bigger one that had like a beefy battery and a nice lens and that kind of thing. And that one was where you would get your audio from. And the audio was the most important part. And the last 10 days, like I'd have to wake up and like basically slow roast the camera over the fire just to get it to turn on. And so that was pretty brutal to try and capture these like meaningful moments. And actually my last night on day 79, I recorded like a 2-hour monologue about like my experience and how it was coming to a close and how at peace I was with it. And turns out the audio wasn't on, so they couldn't use any of it. And
That's heartbreaking.
yeah, it's like, so they just, you know, they pull, I mean, they're super good at their job, and you know, it's likely that the things that I said in that monologue I had said piecemeal here and there, so they try and pull, you know, sound bites from other places.
It seems that we have a guest that's ready to join our broadcast. Someone you know very well. Looks like
Yeah.
I'd like to introduce Jim Little. He's a member of the Rainbow Roots Board of Directors, and also former, was Kielyn Marrone's teacher in the Outdoor Adventure Leadership Program at Laurentian. I think, Jim, you might have a question or two, or just want to say hello.
You're frozen. That's an excellent photo to freeze on.
His expression is priceless.
Oh.
We'll try and bring Jim back, but I wanted to kind of ask you, because this summer there's been kind of an explosion of people experiencing the outdoors, going camping, doing backcountry trips, and often solo female expeditions for the first time. And I wondered if, like, I think this is a great thing, obviously, but I wondered if you sometimes are concerned about people they're very enthusiastic about pursuing outdoor adventures, but they may not have the experience to risk manage properly. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, for sure. I'm a big proponent of learning by mistakes, but taking calculated risk. And so I would encourage people to get out and go for it and challenge yourself, but make sure that you're taking it in steps, you know, like, and getting through some of those bumps in a more safe environment, you know, like go to a place where you know you're going to have cell reception, you know, and start there. And then, you know, go start at a provincial campground, like park and play kind of thing. And like, and then start going to the backcountry, but like one lake over, that kind of thing. And just like build up, especially if you're going solo. If you're in a pair or a group, you know, you can push your limits faster because there's more people to help you and risk manage together. But I mean, that's how I did it. It was just get out. That was fun. What can we, you know, like, what did we learn from that? And we, like, trust me, we started out as just complete rookies, making all the same mistakes that, you know, most people make. And read books, but then don't just think because I've read these books I know everything. I mean, the hands-on experience is invaluable. I don't consider myself a particularly special person. I just consider myself a person that allows myself to be pushed and work through the pain and see value in those types of experiences. Yeah, like I'm just a regular person that likes to experience those types of type 2 fun, I call it.
Now, there was something you had said, it wasn't long after you were able to speak to media about your experience that you'd done an interview with CBC Radio on Morning North. And I remember you saying that well, I'd love to talk about the feelings of transformation that you had around day 60, but you also said coming out of an experience like that, it actually means you have to do a bit of like processing some trauma. Like, what did you mean? Because it felt like you didn't have much of a chance to discuss that in that interview, but that, you know, there's a lot of like bright spots and amazing things that happened, but that it took some like unpacking when it was all said and done.
Well, I think when you go through an experience like that, and there are so many highs and lows, that when you come out of it, like, for example, I mean, one of the things that I had to unpack was that I didn't make it. I didn't make it to the 100 days. And, you know, you start thinking like, man, if that was a real survival situation, I would have died. And, you know, you're like, it's, it takes a little bit of switching through your head to rationalize. Well, and, you know, I've even spoke to people that have said, yeah, you know, maybe you would have died, but that's reality. You know, that's something not all survival situations turn out well. You know, like probably the majority of them don't. You hear of all these hero tales where, like, you know, Into the Void and you know, all of these crazy stories where people were stranded at sea for 9 years or whatever, and, you know, make it back. And then you can rationalize it being like, yeah, but if it was a real survival situation, I wouldn't have taken my crappy fishing spot. I would have walked that 100 meters to where there was a perfect fishing spot, and they buzzed me and said I couldn't fish there. So, you know, like those types of rationalizations go on in your head to try and just be at peace with the outcome, despite me saying, day 80, I was so at peace with leaving. I was, but as soon as you get a meal, a hot shower, and warmth all around you, and you can actually be just in your base layer and not in your like 8 different layers that you're wearing and like bumping into everything, you're looking through that, you know, frosty glass out at the -45 morning, and you're just like, oh, like I should still be out there. You know, like I could have kept going. Maybe I should have pushed myself a little bit further, but you know, so that's the type of processing that I'm doing was doing, was just like coming to terms with failing, basically. And, you know, I have tons and tons and tons of people being like, you didn't fail, you won, you know, like you're amazing and that kind of thing. Thanks, Jim. And I don't feel like a failure, not one bit, but the competitiveness in me, you know, we talked about, you had mentioned me being a swimmer, and I was just a competitive athlete all my life. And it's always been in individual sports. And I think that setting those sort of benchmarks for myself in life has just been what is my greatest strength, but also one of my greatest weaknesses. So yeah, I had high expectations for myself. Did I think I was going to make it to 100 days? Absolutely not. Like I had no false sense of like pride or ego that I was thinking, oh yeah, like, oh, I'll see you at day 100.
Wait a second. Now, was Roland actually the first person to make it to 100 days?
Yeah.
So in a way, like my thinking, like, come on, why didn't you think you could make it 100 days? Realistically, no one had done it before.
Yeah, in the 70 people that have done this experience, I'm the 5th longest ever. So in any other season, apart from season 3, I would have won with my 80 days. And so that's nothing to not be proud of. And I am. I just, just in my head, that's how, I mean, I'm totally at peace with the experience, but I'm always just like, oh, like, could have
Of
pushed myself
course.
a little bit harder, or, whatever.
I don't know if you saw the comment come across online, but Jim Little mentions that his Wi-Fi at home is not great enough to do the connection, but he wanted to, he's saying, there it is on screen,
Yeah.
looking forward to connecting to my former student who is now my master. That is quite a compliment.
That's very sweet and unnecessary, Jim. We'd love to have you out at the pond again. Absolutely.
Another person is wondering about some of the other restrictions that the show put on you. And of course, you didn't get to choose the plot of land that you had. And I actually feel that plot of land watching when you don't get to see a fresh, sunshiny day for weeks and weeks on end, and you were basically in some kind of a cloudy bay where smoke wouldn't come out of the chimney. And anybody who's done backcountry camping, and you can't, it's like inexplicable why the smoke won't properly vent. Like you must have been thinking like, how am I going to deal with this situation? But I mean, that's the hand you're dealt, right?
Yeah, for sure. And I loved my land. I absolutely loved it. It was beautiful, welcoming. It really felt like home. The fishing was not good. It was shallow, my entire bay, and like really bouldery. And so when I would fish, it would just get caught on the boulders, and you'd lose your hook. And I had brought a gill net, which was one of my items that I was really looking forward to producing passive, food for me. And I didn't have a single spot where I could get it out and it not just like drape on the floor, and then the waves would come and spin it around and just get all mangled. And then that cloud, I mean, that probably played a bigger role in my last month than even I know, and I think this is kind of an important lesson for everybody that lives in the Northern Hemisphere in winter, where SAD, seasonal affective disorder, is a real thing. And so what happened was my bay froze, but then like it was kind of protected. My bay was protected by an island, and then the big water wasn't frozen yet. And so it was creating, so the moisture would evaporate from the cooling lake and create this localized cloud. And the sun was so low in the horizon that it would come over this like mountain, and then it would just be captured in this band of cloud, and then I would just get to see it as it would pop below the horizon. And so for the entire month of November, I did not see the sun. And when you're low on every other vitamin and mineral in your diet besides whatever the bunnies are giving me, and I had some mushrooms and berries, and some chaga tea and spruce needle tea. I drank a lot of that. You don't know what else you're missing, but vitamin D was definitely one of them.
Another one of our commenters, Carol, is asking if there was a moment that made you laugh out loud. Something hilarious.
Oh my goodness. It's a good question. I would laugh at myself a lot when I was like in the tent, just sort of entertaining myself and talking to the camera. I would have conversations just like we're having now. I'd just like have things pop into my head and talk about them. And as I'm talking about them, I realize how weird I'm sounding, and I'm just like going with it. And so I'm kind of just laughing at myself. But like as far as belly laughing goes, I don't think I didn't really have any of those like really big moments besides catching that fish where I was sort of like, yeah, I mean, I was laughing, but it was like an emotional kind of like exaltation.
So you must have kind of freaked out when you found out that you had basically come third and you had made those 3 medals or amulets.
Yeah.
Tell me about like that realization in that moment.
Well, I was just really proud, you know, like I was actually surprised that I was third and not second. I knew I wasn't first. So just because it was getting so late and I knew how cold it was, and I was thinking about the other people's gear, because, you know, we did orientation together, and there was quite a number of people where I was looking at their winter gear and thinking like, oh, like, I don't know, you know, like I was wishing the best for all of them, but there were a few where I was just like, those are your mittens? Like, you know, that kind of thing. I was like worried for them. So, I was a little bit surprised that I was second, but I was also really happy because I liked the rainbow medallion the best. So I was like, yes, like I get to keep the rainbow one. And I was really honored that like I was able to give the second and first to Callie and Roland. I don't know if Roland kept his, but I know that Callie cherishes hers. So that was special to me.
I want to ask you a little bit more about the relationships that you've forged, because I know that you've continued a lot of conversations with the other competitors and people from other seasons probably. But first, really good question, because here in Sudbury, we have a lot of people that are foraging wild food and just kind of have a natural interest on foraging and preparing wild food. So what was your favorite thing to eat out there?
Well, my area had a lot of lingonberries or bog cranberries, and at first they were a bit hard to get used to because they're quite tart, and can be acidic, but I started just absolutely loving those, just like by the handful, like bah. And I'd like fill my I'd have like some rusty cans that I would fill up, and then I would go home and I had snare wire, and I would make these necklaces, and I would just spend my evenings. It was like Christmas time making Christmas garland. I would just like I would stab the cranberries onto these necklaces, and then I dried them up in my shelter. So I had in the end, my goal was so that I could have a full necklace of cranberries, and then I called them bracelets of blueberries, because the blueberries were not like the blueberries here in Sudbury. They were like oblong, oval shaped, and they were very, very delicate. And so you couldn't like pick them up and stab them, because like you'd stab them and then they just sort of like explode. You had to be very gentle with them, so I could only get a bracelet out of them. And so those berries were definitely my favorite. And I ended up having like over 150 necklaces and bracelets of the berries dried, and ate a lot of mushrooms, and mushrooms that, you know, were sort of bland. But then I found this one, actually two, but one fresh giant hawk-eyed hedgehog mushroom, and it was fresh and it was meaty and it was like, oh my god, amazing. And then I harvested that one, and I look up and this is like big spruce tree, and there's another huge one just sitting up on one of the branches, because the squirrels collect mushrooms and then they put them in branches to dry. And so I was like, yoink, thank you. And the rabbits, of course, were amazing, and the lake trout was phenomenal.
So we're starting to run out of time, but I wanted to ask you, kind of thinking about everybody who's watching, and I think most people who are still with us right now, and there's like more than 60 people online at the moment, and many more will watch later. Living in the wilderness for the amount of time you did, like, it can give you quite a transformational experience. You know, when, like you say, you hit that point in time where it no longer seems like you're trying to like get your routines down. It now feels like this is life, and now I am an inhabitant here. And I think that's a feeling that not everybody gets to truly experience, because they don't get that amount of time in the wilderness. Mm-hmm. But I know that you probably felt that even on trips like a regular backcountry trip.
Mhm.
And I kind of wonder if for most people, if they aren't going to be able to take on a challenge like alone, but how could they try to find that feeling? How could they try to make that opportunity happen for them in their own life if they've only got, 2 weeks off in the summer, or they've got a long weekend?
Mhm. Well, I think that answer goes right to our whole philosophy with our company. When we started Lure of the North, we had a lot of people tell us that no one's going to sign up for your week-long trip. Everyone wants your weekend kind of bucket list check mark kind of experience and move on. People are moving towards shorter and shorter trips so that because their attention spans are low, everyone's so busy. And Dave and I both were just like, well, no, like I don't want to do weekend trips. I want to do those long trips. And so we right off the hop started offering, week-long trips. And we were finding our shorter trips weren't, we did offer an intro, like a 4-day intro or something, and it wasn't selling, but our week-long trip was. And I think, and then it just kept evolving. And they were like, well, now let's try and offer a 2-week trip. And we did, and it sold out. And then we're like, let's go for 3. And so now we sell 3-week winter snowshoe trips. And it's funny because when we have a 3-week trip and a 2-week trip in the same winter, people don't want the 2-week trip. They want the 3-week trip because it's always like they want more. And I think that goes back to people need that time in the wilderness, and 3 days you're just getting into it. So, the first day, it's all about you and your gear, and you're like, just figuring out, how do I wear this backpack, or how do I tie these boots so that they're comfortable. Second day, you're getting into the rhythm. You've kind of figured out a lot of your gear. The third day, you can start to look up and enjoy your surroundings. And then the fourth day, you can really start to emerge and collectively enjoy your group that you're with, or if you're solo, the experience that you're having. So you need a 4-day minimum. And then, to really take advantage of that awareness that you're giving yourself, the 5th, 6th, and 7th day are crucial. Because unfortunately, when people have busy lives like we all do, no matter what, on the last day or the night before the last day, you've already switched your brain off and you're thinking about the things you got to do when you get home. So if you don't give yourself that in between time, then you can't walk away from the experience enriched. And so that's why our trips are minimum 1 week. And, that's our intro trip, is 1 week. Come out with us. We spend 3 days at the pond where we, do things very like, it's all about teaching and getting to know the skills. And then we take the next 4 days and we go travel out into the wilderness, applying the skills that you've learned. And by those first 3 days, you've already figured out your gear. So you've got those 4 days to just enjoy the experience and come home refreshed.
I can see you smiling as you talk about this. And I mean, what is it that you see in the people that you guide? Like, what are the reactions that you see in them as they kind of move through that process?
Oh, it's the best. It's the best because we get so many people coming back year after year after year. It's an addictive feeling to feel. One of the things that Dave and I both do within our company is push people's boundaries physically, because through physical challenge, you get that mental challenge, and you allow your brain to relax a little bit, because so much of our life is just like, on rapid fire. Your brain is just going a mile a minute, but your body isn't being exercised to that same level. And so if you can bring up your body activity level to where your brain has been working for this long, it does something to yourself, and you can reset and almost like have that clarity and purpose in your life, and go home and be a better dad, or, you know, like that kind of thing. Like it's, I'm not saying that I change people's lives, but the wilderness does. And that's what we do is try and bring people out to get that. And that's what I love about our job, is that we can push people physically, because it is amazing what the body can do. And I don't think people get the opportunity to push themselves physically nearly as much as our bodies were meant to be.
I think nobody can really talk about that with the credibility that you do when you think about the physical strain that you underwent. I mean, yeah, your body is basically starving itself out there. There's frostbite, there's all kinds of things at you, but you persevered, and you also were able to determine when you'd had enough. All of these things, I think, make you such an inspirational person, an inspirational Canadian. So proud of you. And I just have to, I think we should leave it at this, unless you have anything else that you'd like to tell the 60 or so folks that are online with us right now. If there's anything that you wish, a message you wish you could get out there to them, something that people are overlooking when they talk to you and have these conversations.
Well, no, thanks for having me. But I could go on for hours. I love talking about getting people outside. And I think the biggest takeaway that I want people to remember from me is that you can push through your limits and find new limits, and push through those limits and find your new limit, you know, and just keep going and don't give up. And when it's hard, you know, take stock, have a cry, and keep on going.
It's true. You can have a cry and just get up and keep going again, right? So
absolutely.
Amazing. We could maybe bring Dan in, back in. I know he's sitting there backstage, if you will. Dan, did you have any comments or questions for Kielyn before she goes? Looks like he's frozen. He was right live a second ago. There he is. Dan, any questions or comments about?
I'm very privileged to be the one person to be able to kind of ask these questions. I'm going to connect it to what Rainbow Roots does, right? You talked about physically challenging our mind and body, right? And you offer this super experience, and I need to be out there for 2 weeks before long as well in the wilderness. And I think that's why the Camino is really popular, and that's why we set out to do it, right? It's only one day, but it is 30 kilometers. And for many of us to walk 8 hours straight without stopping, that is a challenge, right? And it's not meant for everybody. You got to be prepared. You got to stretch, because I know the first time I was like, yeah, I'm fit, I'm healthy, I'm young, right? The next day, you know, I was paying the price for it, right? So I think that's what we're trying to do with our hiking in the Camino, right? And the other one, you made me aware, you talked, the awareness, and I really like the clarity, purpose that you mentioned that comes through being in nature. And I think in 2020, more than ever, we recognize that importance, and there's a lot of research and scientific studies out there to support that. And I would say what we're trying to do at Rainbow Roots is make sure that people get outside for at least 2 hours a week in that nature context, because I think the experience you're providing will really ingrain you into it. And then to maintain that awareness, to maintain that proper feeling, research is saying 2 hours minimum, right? Could be 30-minute chunks, right? And I think if we can get people to just be out on those trails and connecting with that nature, we all come out more positive, more happy in life, right?
Oh yeah, I think the world would be a better place if people went out and walked every day.
Well, I guess we've got our work cut out, Lynn, and the rest of the board still listening, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just a great reminder, having this conversation tonight about how important that is, and that I think it can make your transition into nature faster, smoother. You know, like you say, Kielyn, it can take a couple of days before you feel like at one with yourself out on a trip. But I think if you are experiencing that, even in a small dose on a regular basis, it can help you get into the groove a lot faster. So say, yeah, like don't let it be a barrier if people are watching and thinking, you know, I don't have the opportunity to do a 3-week. Just make sure you keep getting out there.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, I think we're at time pretty much, and questions have come through. We put them through, and so much praise for you, Kielyn, coming through. Inspiration to all young women out there, says Renee Ann Wilson. I have to agree. Completely inspiring to watch you rough it through everything that you did, and amazing, just amazing job. So I think everybody in the Northeast was rooting for you, and probably all of Canada.
Appreciate it a lot. Yeah. Thanks very much for having me. And yeah, it was great to chat.
It felt like meeting a new friend tonight. So thank you so much for joining us and being part of our annual general meeting. And I really hope that next time you come into Sudbury, you do take a little explore around some of our trails. Take a little bit of time to wander about.
Absolutely. I will do. Thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, Kielyn.
Yeah. Bye.
And I think, everyone, that'll be about a wrap for us. I just wanted to say thank you so much to everybody who stayed online with us today. A couple of reminders: if you want any more information about Rainbow Roots Association, be sure to visit our website at rainbowroots.com. And of course, we're on social media right now, so you can connect with us that way as well. So once again, thanks everyone for your support throughout the year and for staying with us tonight. For Daniel Barrett, our Executive Director, and myself, Lynn Bullock, that's a wrap for tonight.